Well, Jennifer Williams, she's a longtime Foreign Service officer who, as you mentioned, she was assigned to Vice President Mike Pence's national security team this past spring. So she is his special advisor for Europe and Russia. And as you mentioned, she listened in on that July 25th call in question between Presidents Trump and Zelensky. And she also accompanied the vice president to that September 1st meeting in Warsaw, where Pence met directly with Zelensky. Pence, after that meeting, told reporters that he did not speak with Ukraine's president about the Bidens, but that he did talk about corruption. And he did talk about that withheld military aid that was meant for Ukraine to counter Russian aggression, that military aid that was authorized by this Congress. So the thinking is that Williams can shed light for House investigators into just how much Pence knew about Trump's Ukraine maneuvers. Now, earlier this morning, I hit up Williams' attorney, and he gave me this statement. He says this: Jennifer is a longtime dedicated State Department employee. If required to appear, she will answer the committee's questions. We expect her testimony. Look at this. We expect her testimony will largely reflect what is already in the public record. Well, think about that for a moment. Okay. What is in the public record? Right now, you have 6 fact witnesses, 4 of whom who've testified privately before House investigators, who have spoken directly to the existence of a quid pro quo, of a bribery plot, of a shakedown. You know, insert your chosen phrase. Williams, I'm told, was concerned about what she heard on that July 25th call, but that she did not flag her immediate superiors about it. So you can imagine that House investigators today, Steph, are going to get an earful.
I know nothing.
He knows nothing. So that's a you and your little dog too moment, isn't it? That is obviously the House Intelligence Committee, the House Oversight Committee, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, taking the deposition of Jennifer Williams, who is a State Department employee detailed to your little dog too, Mike Pence. And so much for the crap yesterday from the GOP, whose ever-changing rationale for still supporting this criminal president was that, and this was yesterday, well, Ukraine didn't even know that we were withholding aid. And I told you, when we were reading Bill Taylor's testimony yesterday to you, you know, the excerpts, obviously Bill Taylor said that Zelensky was told by Mike Pence in Poland that the aid was being withheld and that everything was conditioned on Zelensky getting in front of a microphone, going on CNN. And Zelensky agreed to do it. He was like moments away from going on CNN and trashing Joe Biden and taking the heat in his country, in this country, for getting into an American political election, because Donald Trump has turned the entire State Department under Mike Pompeo into one giant political organization. In fact, he did it with his charity, too. This is just in, okay? For those of you who don't remember, the dissolved Trump Foundation, remember that little charity, hoax? Remember that little charity scam? Remember that little charity lie? Well, apparently, here, let's refresh. Let's all revisit what exactly the Trump Organization is.
The Trump Foundation was originally created to donate money to charitable causes, but Donald Trump stopped contributing his personal funds a decade ago, instead relying on other people's money, like WWE's Linda McMahon, who, with her husband, reportedly donated $5 million. But the New York Attorney General alleges the money didn't go to charitable causes at all, but instead helped pay off Trump creditors and help the then candidate win the White House. Donald Trump has denied the foundation did anything wrong. Yet the lawsuit says during the presidential campaign, Trump allegedly used the foundation for his own benefit by using foundation money to settle a dispute with Palm Beach, Florida, over a flagpole he put up at Mar-a-Lago. The town agreed to waive $120,000 in unpaid fines if Trump's club donated $100,000 to a charity for wounded veterans. The donation was instead paid by the Trump Foundation. According to the Washington Post, Trump's foundation also allegedly paid $12,000 for a football helmet signed by then Denver Broncos quarterback Tim Tebow. Trump's foundation also allegedly paid $20,000 for a 6-foot-tall portrait of Trump painted during a gala at Mar-a-Lago, and another $10,000 for a painting of Trump himself at another charity gala.
Trump had used it to buy things that basically he shouldn't have bought, things that he should have paid for with his own money. He used this charity's money to buy it.
The Attorney General's lawsuit accuses Trump and his 3 eldest children, who are on the board of the foundation, of persistently illegal conduct. That includes allegedly using foundation money to hold a campaign rally disguised as a charity event before the all-important Iowa caucuses.
All right, so Donald Trump used the Trump Charitable Foundation as a campaign slush fund is what he did. He also used it to pay off creditors. He also used it to pay off other legal settlements. It was not a charity at all. So today, a judge has ordered that President Donald Trump pay $2 million to a bunch of nonprofit organizations in his settlement with the New York State Attorney General's office. Trump said back then in January, when he was asked about turning his charity into a political slush fund for his own political benefit, just like he's done with the State Department. See, everything has to be dedicated to Donald Trump's re-election. Everything's got to be dedicated to Donald Trump's initial election. Everything that Donald Trump could do, legal, illegal, he did do. And today he was ordered to pay $2 million. And back in January, he was telling his people at I will not settle. I vow to fight. This is all fake news. Fake news, everybody. My charity is a charity. And then the charity had to be dissolved. And now today the judge ordered that he pay $2 million to the people he ripped off. This lawsuit was filed in 2018. And it also names his 3 kids. It names Junior, Ivanka, and Eric. It says that they all violated federal and state campaign finance laws and that they abused the foundation's tax-exempt status. It was little more, this is what the lawsuits allege, and this is what he settled with. It was little more than a checkbook to serve Mr. Trump's business and political interests. Do you think that he treats the State Department with any more reverence than he treated charities for wounded warriors? I mean, just please give me a break. This man is such a fraud. He is such a con man. You know, listen, Scaramucci was on TV and he was trying to explain why these Republicans who get into his orbit start parroting him and defending him. He said, you know, listen, you don't know Donald Trump. He's like freaking David Koresh. Okay, he's a cult leader.
Look at what happened in Virginia. Look at what happened in Kentucky. Look what happened with Ambassador Sondland today. Every day is a bad day for the president. And so if you're a stock market investor like I have been for 30 years and you're watching the differential and you're actually watching the chart of descent of Trump's presidency, it's very, very bad for him, and it's compounding. And
but
so
the markets, I mean, despite all the chaos that's
well,
going
the
on
stock
so
market's
far,
being levitated by the Federal Reserve. You've had 3 cuts by the Federal Reserve, and they're also purchasing assets now. But I'm just using a stock market metaphor and analogy to explain what's going on with the president. Last month, he had a very bad month. He went from 43% impeach and remove to 49. That's a 15% increase. And so next month, we're into the mid-50s, and then the month after that, we're into the low 60s. It's going to be very, very bad for the Republicans. And the Republicans are now nervous now. Those congressmen...
That's what I was going to ask you. Are they going to begin to distance themselves from this president?
Well, not yet. Not yet, because that's what I was trying to say last night. It's a whole David Koresh, like, you know, bonding and cult-like behavior. He shames people that leave him. You know, he'll out them on Twitter, or he'll bully them, and they're very fearful of him.
Isn't that special? We have David Koresh as president of the United States who defrauds Wounded Warrior charities, buys his own paintings, buys football helmets, you know, just uses everything at his disposal. And we have given him the whole of government, right? Except for the judicial, well, I won't say that, except for the Congress. And he's using all of it for his own political elevation. All of it is a political endeavor.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
If you're looking for a circumstance where the President of the United States was threatening the Ukraine with cutting off aid unless they investigated his political opponent, you would be very disappointed. That does not exist.
Huh?
Now here he is in October.
Show me something that is a crime. If you could show me that, Trump actually was engaging in a quid pro quo outside the phone call, that would be very disturbing.
And so even today, in the face of new transcripts that the Democrats say confirm an extortion plot, here was Lindsey Graham.
I'm not going to entertain impeaching the president over this matter, period. Done.
What? I don't know what evidence, I don't know what kind of money flowed. I don't know if there was Russian money, foreign money of any sort. I don't know what kind of compromise there is out there about various legislators. But this is really sick. I mean, you've got Lindsey Graham changing his story day to day. You have Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana last night at a rally claiming that Donald Trump had improved our economy in some stupid way. I mean, we know that GDP is down to 1.9%. This 4% growth that he promised us we would get if we only just rewarded the wealthiest Americans with a $2 trillion tax cut. Of course, we would pay for that, and then they would get the money, and then they would trickle it down to us someday, somehow, somewhere. And so we should go for that, right? And now they're claiming victory in the GDP. I mean, we have a recession in manufacturing jobs, 36,000 lost. You have 6 coal mining companies going absolutely bust, literally declaring bankruptcy. Kentucky coal miners voted Democratic in the last election on Tuesday. Okay, everybody is terrified on Capitol Hill about these results, although the GOP won't say it. Obviously, they're freaked out. They see that they have lost all of suburbia. And why does that matter? That matters because rural people can't live in rural places anymore, and they have to move to places they can afford to live, which is outside of cities, so they can work and live. And they are voting Democratic again. I mean, the whole Virginia legislature, the House, the Senate, the governorship, all in Democratic hands for the first time since 1993. Right? The only place that was, I won't even call it a disappointment, but it was, if you look really deep into it, which I've been, is Mississippi. And why was that disappointing? It's because African Americans stayed home again in Mississippi, where they could have made a really, really huge difference in the turnout there instead of this Tate. I mean, really, do you want a guy named Tate as your governor in a place like Mississippi, like the poorest state in the freaking United States of America? I don't know. But, every other place, the Pennsylvania suburbs, they went blue. All of Virginia went blue. You had, whatchamacallit, I mean, it's so unbelievable. Ralph Northam is, embarrassed for Donald Trump.
This president has been an embarrassment to this country and sold ourselves to other countries, our allies. I mean, it's one thing after another, and I think it's catching up with him. So certainly was a factor. But I think in Virginia yesterday, people spoke about the progress that we've made, the progress that we'll continue to make. Another issue that is very, very important in Virginia is women's reproductive health care.
Really?
And also stopping the discrimination against the LGBTQ community. Those are important issues, and Virginians spoke to those yesterday, and we're listening, and we're going to pass some good laws and policy to move Virginia forward.
He seems so happy, doesn't he, for Ralph? This was a guy who was involved in a blackface scandal, okay? Then you've got his attorney general, who was also involved in a scandal. And yet the people of Virginia were like anything but Trump's people, anything at all. I can't take it anymore. The lying is endless. The disingenuous way in which they pose themselves, the attack on teachers, the attack on Medicaid expansion, the attack on health care, the attack on, they want infrastructure. They want a minimum wage increase. People really want to move on with their American dream. People want to do better. People want to feel better. People want to have access to doctors. People want to have access to health care, whether you're a woman or you're not. These are issues. These are real issues. The discrimination and the hatred that this man, spews from a podium is just endless. It's nauseating, and it does absolutely nobody any good in any respect, in any meaningful way in your life. So here, I just want to tell you another story that probably is under the radar that you need to know. There was an attempt by the Department of Health and Human Services, and not just the Department of Health and Human Services, but the Civil Rights Division. Check that out. This is going to be so offensive to so many people. The Civil Rights Division at the Department of Health and Human Services is led by some religious zealot named Roger Severino. Roger Severino. And Roger Severino propounded a rule that said that anybody that works in a doctor's office, I mean anybody, the receptionist, seriously, the phlebotomist, somebody that draws blood, the coder, the insurance coder, right, who has to put in the code for the procedure, whatever. They can all refuse to put in the code. They can all refuse to make you an appointment. They can all refuse any service they want to by claiming it violates their religious principles to serve you. To serve you. That they are allowed to opt out of providing any service, anything at all, including making you an appointment. This is just unbelievable, right? So we're talking about, I swear to God, I'm reading from the thing, right? They were talking about in this rule, billing staff in a doctor's office, receptionists in a doctor, anybody else who in any way assists in the performance of a procedure for a person that they wish to not serve for religious reasons. This was propounded by the Health and Human Services Secretary, Alex Azar, and the Civil Rights Division of HHS, which is supposed to be protecting people's civil rights, except that they think that you can say, well, I'm a this, whatever your religion is, and I don't see women alone. Okay, I won't be alone with a woman without my wife present. And so therefore I can't, whatever it is, anything at all. And from the receptionist on to the billing staff, and the court struck it down. The court said, the judge said the violations of civil rights were numerous, fundamental, far-reaching, and vacated the entire rule. That rule was about to take effect the 22nd of November, just before Thanksgiving. What are you thankful for? I'm thankful my religion allows me to deny people health care. What? Seriously. So a judge in a federal court knocked down this rule that would make it permissible for doctors and any healthcare worker to refuse care to anybody that they decided that they didn't want to. It just takes your breath away. And that is what some people understand is going on in this country, and they're voting that way.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
What I can tell you about the Trump policy toward the Ukraine, it was incoherent. It depends on who you talk to. They seem to be incapable of forming a quid pro quo. So, no, I find the whole process to be a sham, and I'm not going to legitimize it.
Chairman, what changed your mind? You told activists that you were willing to be open to hearing about
Yeah, but you didn't get the whole thing. If you can show me there's a criminal misconduct here. This is a joke. I've read the phone call for myself. The president of the Ukraine said there's no quid pro quo. It never ends. What changed my mind is when Schiff came up with a process that's vastly different than what every other president was allowed to do when it came to defending themselves. I think the whole thing is sour grapes and, politically driven. This is the first time anybody's ever been impeached by a partisan. The last time we did this, it was with special counsels.
But as a juror, shouldn't you read all the...
I'm not a juror here.
Well, eventually you might be.
Yeah, I might be.
Shouldn't you eventually read all that?
Aren't I just telling you, just as honestly as I think the whole thing's a crock? If Mueller had found something, it would have been completely different because I trusted Mueller.
He found 10 cases of obstruction.
I've looked at the phone call. I don't care what Sunderland presumes. Show me where there's a quid pro quo. The president of the Ukraine says there was not. I've seen no evidence there was. The whole thing is manufactured. It's never ending. So if you send it over here based on the phone call, it's going nowhere. I've done everything but take an ad out in the paper. This whole theory of impeachment, the process, is illegitimate, is outside the norm. This substance I find unpersuasive.
So there you have it, and I don't know what it is that they have on him. Mitch McConnell, we know what his motivation is, obviously. You know, his wife is in the Chinese shipping business. That's his family's business, and she's the Secretary of Transportation, which, of course, transportation means nothing on shipping, right? Right. So, and also, you know, he's trying to pack the court with judges, and he just doesn't care about anything to do with your life. He doesn't care about school teachers, Mitch McConnell, because there was a teacher strike in his state. He never even bothered to acknowledge it, let alone show up for it. He couldn't care less about pension reform, as they steal the pension from, you know, coal miners. When their coal companies declare bankruptcy, the first thing that they get relief from is paying the workers' pensions, right? Same thing with the school teachers. I mean, this man couldn't give a rat's ass about any of his constituents' concerns. He doesn't care about health care. He wanted to, you know, repeal Obamacare, and they came really damn close to it, except for John McCain, right? They just wanted to get rid of the whole thing with no replacement whatsoever. And where would that leave Kentuckians? And where would that leave me? And where would that leave people, the 20 million people who do have to buy their health insurance by themselves, on their own, either through the exchange or through an insurance carrier? I mean, you know, these people don't care about anything that has to do with our families, our kids' education, who's teaching them, how much they get. I saw a little video. It was just the most heartbreaking thing. Some kid got $15 for his birthday in a card from grandma, and he decided to give it to his teacher. What kind of country is this? Now, Mitch McConnell, he stands there and he goes, you know, I did you a favor. I blocked, you know, Obama from getting Merrick Garland on the Supreme Court. And now, you know, we've got this, we had this unique situation where we had the presidency, the House, and the Senate. And I just rammed through judges because that's all I care about. That's it. And I'm really happy about it.
When I realized that not only had you won, but we had taken the House, we'd held the Senate, and this was going to be one of those unusual periods where Republicans had all three branches. To show you how unusual that is, you go back 100 years, only about 20 of the last 100 years has our party had all three. And we got a chance to set the agenda, an opportunity to move the ball in the right direction.
What ball?
What's the most important thing?
Healthcare.
Clearly, it was the Supreme Court. You had been helped enormously by a decision that I made, and these guys back me up, not to let President Obama fill that Scalia vacancy on the way out the door.
It's all they care about is perverting our system of justice. That's all they care about. It's their focus. It's their preference. They want oligarchs' money to replace your opinion. They don't want free speech. They don't want a free press. They don't want investigations into dirty, fraudulent, activities. They don't want us to know that Donald Trump is using the entirety of this government to be a giant political operation, that no work is getting done, none whatsoever, because the Grim Reaper there, Mitch McConnell, had 250 pieces of legislation passed by the House. Now, I'm not saying every single one of those 250 pieces were monumental, okay? Some of them were things like naming post offices, as usual. But most of the first 10 bills that were passed by the House of Representatives when we took back the House had to do with your health care, had to do with cleaning up elections, had to do with providing paper ballots, backup ballots, the ability to do recounts in places where you can't do recounts, right? I mean, the gun background checks, things like that. All sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk while he stands there and gloats and says, all I care about is stealing the Supreme Court.
If the House acts, I think the place to start would take a look at what the agreement was 20 years ago as a starting place and discuss how we may be able to agree to handle the process. After that, it's largely out of our hands, in the hands of the Chief Justice who presides over it.
You see the connection?
Who rules on motions. And how long it goes on really just depends on how long the Senate wants to spend on it.
Oh, my God.
I will say I'm pretty sure how it's likely to end. If it were today, I don't think there's any question it would not lead to a removal So the question is how long does the Senate want to take? How long do the presidential candidates want to be here on the floor of the Senate instead of in Iowa and New Hampshire? And all of these other related issues that may be going on at the same time. It's very difficult to ascertain, how long this takes. I'd be surprised if it didn't end the way the two previous ones did, with the president not being removed from office.
These people have made up their minds that nothing that the president could do, would do, has done, did do, is removable. Nothing at all. Even using the State Department and turning it into a giant political operation to benefit Donald Trump's reelection. Even that is okay. They're playing these clips today of the rally last night where Senator John Kennedy, hey, Senator John Kennedy, you're no John Kennedy. We knew John Kennedy. John Kennedy was a friend of this country's. You're no John Kennedy, John Kennedy. John Kennedy is calling Nancy Pelosi dumb, but the most important clip that isn't getting played is Senator John Kennedy announcing that some quid pro quos are appropriate. And the one that Donald Trump did is fine. And they will not remove him for turning the State Department into his own political operation and inviting foreign governments into our elections. No, they won't. And if he believes conspiracy theories, so be it. Let him be the president anyway. What?
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
There are perfectly appropriate quid pro quos, and there are inappropriate quid pro quos. Just saying that there is a quid pro quo, at least based on my analysis of the evidence that I've seen so far, is a red herring. I just don't understand, nor do I think that when the case gets to the Senate, they're going to be litigating the issue of a quid pro quo.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
What I can tell you about the Trump policy toward the Ukraine, it was incoherent. It depends on who you talk to.
It does.
They seem to be incapable of forming a quid pro quo.
Oh.
So, no, I find the whole process to be a sham, and I'm not going to legitimize it.
Oh, my God. So, they got to get their story together because Lindsey Graham is saying they're too stupid. Trump is too stupid to have formulated a quid pro quo. And Senator Kennedy from Louisiana is saying it doesn't matter if there's a quid pro quo because some quid pro quos are perfectly legitimate. But the testimony from 6 fact witnesses is that Donald Trump turned the State Department into his own political reelection campaign, and that State Department career employees who had spent 37 years in the State Department, some who had retired and were asked back by Mike Pompeo, you got George Kent, his transcript was just released. They're all telling you that what Donald Trump was doing was vile. He was extortion. He was extorting President Zelensky in Ukraine, a newly elected anti-corruption president in Ukraine who was barely, done putting his government together, with cutting off, and did cut off, all kinds of security aid to Ukraine unless, and this is George Kent's actual quote, I got the release of his stuff today. This is amazing. He said Ambassador Gordon Sondland had talked to the president, POTUS, and POTUS wanted nothing less than President Zelensky to go to a microphone and say, investigations, Biden and Clinton. How is that okay? Senator Kennedy, Senator Graham, Senator McConnell. How is that even remotely in the ballpark of what's okay? He further says, I don't believe the United States should ask other countries to engage in politically associated investigations and prosecutions. As a general principle, I don't think that as a matter of policy, the United States should do that, period. Because I've spent so much of my career trying to improve the rule of law. And in countries like Ukraine and Georgia, both of which want to join NATO, both of which have enjoyed billions of dollars of assistance from Congress, there's an outstanding issue about people in office in those countries using selectively politically motivated prosecutions to go after their opponents, and that's wrong for the rule of law, regardless of what country in which that happens. He is literally comparing Donald Trump's presidency to the presidency of Viktor Yanukovych, to the presidency of the president of Georgia under Soviet rule. Holy crap. So you have that. And then you've got yesterday Bill Taylor. This is the crux of Bill Taylor's. He said, the question to Bill Taylor was, so when you say that this was the first time I heard that the security assistance, not just the White House meeting, was conditioned on the investigation. When you talk about conditioned, did you mean that if they didn't do this, the investigations, they weren't going to get that military assistance? Answer: that was my clear understanding. Security assistance money would not come until the president of Ukraine committed to pursue the investigation. Question: so if they don't do this, they are not going to get that. That was your understanding. Answer: yes, sir. Are you aware that quid pro quo literally means this for that? Answer: I am. That's all you need to know. So that's just two fact witnesses. That's just two of them. We know that Sondland lied. Sondland said he never even met Rudy Giuliani. I mean, and then he had to, add an addendum to it because, the other testimony refreshed his recollection. No, Sondland is a mega donor who was going to get Trump's back. He was going to go down with the Trump ship the way Lindsey is, the way McConnell is, the way that Rand Paul is, the way that Senator Kennedy is. I mean, these guys are literally, they're stamping their exit visa from the Senate so that they can move on to where the real money is, the lobby shops. And Mitch McConnell's going to satisfy himself and lick his wounds by saying, I totally own the courts, and now lobbying is going to be a breeze. I can lobby on the tax code better than anybody now. I can lobby on regulations. I can lobby on clean air. I can lobby against the EPA. I can lobby against everything and anything that's coming down the pike. Hire me. My plants are sitting in major court positions so that you, Mr. Polluter, or you, Mr. Tax Cheat, you're going to get a pass. That's what this is. And for anybody to ignore it is to pretend that we live in a country that's, transparent, free. Oh, my God. It's so amazing. And I don't know. I mean, I can't think of what else they are getting in exchange for doing this. So it has to be the future of their ability to earn. It has to be. I mean, this is a very bad week for them, okay? They freaking lost Kentucky. They lost Virginia. They lost the Pennsylvania suburbs, okay? They lost, it was so close in Mississippi compared to, how it should be in Mississippi, right? And so they're terrified for their jobs, so they're planning for their future. And their future is going to be their earning years. These old, white, pasty men have earning years ahead of them. And they're going to make sure that all the judges are strategically placed so that their earning years are unimpeded by the rule of law. Sick. It's sick. Jerry in Baltimore.
Hey, Randy.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
Okay.
I just wanted to remind you of Reagan's wife, Nancy.
Uh-huh.
She had an astrologer telling her what to tell her husband, who was, suffering dementia or early onset dementia, what to do. So, I mean, this is perfectly normal for a Republican.
It is.
They have always been cult worshipers, So
astrology isn't a cult.
I'm sorry.
Stop it. That was the 80s. That was the you know, what was her name? The Friends Network, right? Where, you know, you dialed up and they, you know, they read your tarot cards, or what was it? There's something Friends Network. Remember? It's like everybody was into it. Everybody was calling their astrologer to find out how they could, you know, improve their lot in life. Carol in California.
Hi. I just wanted to comment on that lawsuit where they struck down the Department of Health.
Yeah.
You know, that thing you were talking about. I had a thought on that. I don't, you know, these religious zealots that we have all over the place running in our government, I don't know how much they're religious zealots, but I'll tell you who that helped. HMOs make their money by denying people services. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that have worked just fine? To use an entire little population of people there and say, oh, we're just protecting their rights.
Yeah,
well, really,
no, listen,
bottom line is,
you know why?
I wonder how much money they got from the HMOs.
Well,
you know, that guy.
The reason why the court struck it down is because there were the court was presented with evidence that there were like 400 cases of doctors objecting to taking care of their patients, and the court found that that was false, that the information that they provided to the court was fake. It was false. It was phonied up information. He said, you know, they found like one or two instances in the entire United States. These people are not religious zealots, okay? That's where the Reagan astrology thing might come in, where, you know, if you are, depending on tarot cards, something tells me you don't trust God with your prosperity, right? As the prosperity gospel, you know, twists God into some guy who, you know, only believes that you need to get wealthy in this life. I don't even understand that. So that's a lie, too. No, they're pandering to the base. These kinds of rules and regulations and religious freedom cases, which are based on lies, right, are to pander to a very ignorant, crazy religious base that is led by the prosperity megachurch preachers. Now, Trump just invited one into the White House, and she's just a lunatic. She says you need to tithe to her to guarantee success for the year.
Turn up your mind.
This morning, as Washington braces for the next critical phase of the impeachment inquiry, public hearings, President Trump on defense.
This is a witch hunt at the highest level.
It all gets underway Wednesday when current and former State Department officials testify on camera about their firsthand accounts, saying the president withheld military aid to get Ukraine to investigate the Bidens. Heading into this week, a sharp partisan divide over the way forward. Democrats aiming to keep the spotlight on the July 25th phone call between President Trump and the leader of Ukraine. And their key question, did the White House withhold military aid unless Ukraine did a political favor for the president?
This is a very simple, straightforward act. The president broke the law.
But Republicans are aiming to broaden the inquiry to include an investigation into the business dealings of Hunter Biden, who was on the board of a Ukrainian company while his father, Joe Biden, was vice president.
It's unfair to treat Trump under one standard and Joe Biden under a different standard.
Democrats say while some suggested Republican witnesses could be called, there's no reason to question Hunter Biden.
There are certainly questions, of course, and many people have asked them, but it's not relevant to this week's hearing.
It comes as Republicans struggle with their messaging. Louisiana Senator John Kennedy saying the president's intent matters.
If it can be demonstrated that the president asked for and had the requisite state of mind, that the president asked for an investigation of a political rival, that's over the line.
President Trump urging Republican allies not to back down, tweeting, the call to the Ukrainian president was perfect. Republicans don't be led into the fool's trap of saying it was not perfect, but is not impeachable. No, it is much stronger than that. Nothing was done wrong. But outside of Washington, the president's base unfazed. Mr. Trump receiving a warm welcome over the weekend at the Alabama-LSU college football game.
USA! USA! Maybe Trump should celebrate Confederate Veterans Day. Maybe that's what he should do, because it is like the first place that he was able to go where he didn't get booed out of the freaking stadium, right? So the LSU Alabama game, which was a great game, by the way, I have to say. I really liked it, But those are his peeps. So happy Veterans Day to those of you who fought for the Confederacy. I mean, the Confederacy was trying to leave the United States, sort of the earliest version of Brexit. Oh, and by the way, none of those people were American citizens. None of them. So happy Veterans Day to those who serve this country, whether you are from here or you're not from here, like the 25,000 that are currently serving, who are immigrants to this nation and are expecting to get citizenship in return for their service to this country. But they don't. Thank you, Donald Trump. They don't. They fought for America, and now they're being forced to fight to even be part of America. And tomorrow, just so you know, it's going to get lost in this whole week, but tomorrow is the big Supreme Court oral job. Yeah, it's the big oral at the Supreme. Well, it's a weekend. It was a weekend. And tomorrow is, the Supreme Court's version of oral. They have oral arguments tomorrow on DACA. Whether or not DACA is a legal thing for the president to extend or not, or something in the middle. But here you have, Veterans Day, right? And Donald Trump went to New York to celebrate the veterans. And these are two places where Donald Trump doesn't belong. He hates New York. He doesn't want to be a New Yorker anymore. He's trying to get some status here in Florida, probably to avoid all of the lawsuits that are being filed against him in New York State. It seems like a legal maneuver to me more than a tax maneuver, because until he releases his tax returns, we don't even think he paid any taxes. So there's that. But these are two places he doesn't belong. He has skipped veterans parades before today because it was raining. Do you remember that? See, veterans remember things like that. Because it was raining. But he did today's parade in New York City because every single time Donald Trump needs cover for something bad, he hides behind a veteran. Now, I don't know if Lindsey Graham is working on this particular thing or not, but we need a Bone Spurs Day so that he can celebrate with the full thrust of his enthusiasm. Why don't we have a day for bone spurs? Why don't we have a day for conscientious objectors? Because you don't deserve it, that's why. Thank you. Okay. So here you have Donald Trump high off of the LSU game, where he was cheered. And it's fine as long as he's in the Deep South. It's fine for him. These are his peeps. This is who loves him. I'll tell you something, one of the peeps actually stepped up to the microphone, and a reporter asked, why do you support Donald Trump? Which is a legit question. His answer was rather weird.
And I want to turn here to Parker as well. The three of you told me you voted for the president in 2016. You're supporters of his. Why do you like him so much, and what policies stand out to you that you support?
Well, I would say mainly just the no-nonsense policies, and especially since Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. That's awesome, yeah. It's totally perfect. Just can't wait to see it.
Turning back.
It couldn't name one policy because he doesn't have any policies that benefit anybody. This is why all 72 counties in Wisconsin have worse unemployment this year than last year, okay, and on it goes. But he likes his policies, but he can't name one. But especially since Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. This is QAnon stuff, you understand. This is conspiracy crap. This is a French conspiracy theory that parades itself around on 4chan, and about 23,000 Trump supporters are involved in it. Now, that's not going to win you an election or anything like that, but that is where this swill comes from. And so that's where Donald Trump has to stay. He has to stay with his peeps, and his peeps apparently are in the Deep South. It can't be about the veterans because, A, he doesn't like them. He doesn't like them, especially, POWs. He hates a prisoner of war. You know that, right? He only likes veterans who weren't captured. He also doesn't like General H.R. McMaster these days. He doesn't like Mad Dog Mattis anymore. He was no good. Remember, he was a bad general, lazy general, stupid general. He didn't like him. And he certainly hates Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. So can you spare me with this, he loves the veterans thing? And let's move on to what the hell is the QAnon thing, okay? This conspiracy theory that started on the dark armpit, it started in the smelly, overgrown pit of some weird person on the internet who decided that he was going to pretend that he was an intel officer. And he was going to feed them all these crazy conspiracy theories, all of them unopposed, so that people could turn it into some sort of occulty religion. Now we've got four candidates for the GOP that are all openly embracing QAnon. We've seen the Q T-shirts, the Q babies, it's very at the Trump rallies. We've seen it. And, basically, these are hardcore nationalists that follow Trump, okay? Which, by the way, those were the same people that attended Junior's little triggered thing. And apparently Junior named his book correctly because he went to talk to neo-Nazis and hardcore white nationalists at UCLA to promote his book Triggered. And he ended up turning on the Trump supporters there because they wanted a Q&A and he didn't want to answer any questions. He didn't want to give an A to any Q. And all the Q people were there and he didn't want to give the A to the Q. And I would just say, QAnon, QA, QA. He's disloyal. He's disloyal. No, but he wrote this book about, liberals being triggered and how we're snowflakes. And then he got heckled by the whitest of the pure white snowflakes. The really crazy people, because no Q and A, Q and A. It was just, and then Kimberly Guilfoyle, his plastic girlfriend, she started calling them incels. She started berating their sexual prowess, like on the stage and stuff in a leather dress.
RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
Just in case you don't understand what goes on the internets, on the, on the dirty, smelly underbelly of the internets, on the 4chans and the 8chans and the Reddits and the, there is this French conspiracy theory called QAnon, and it believes that there is a deep state. So this is why I made a snarky T-shirt. You'll see. You'll be able to buy it soon. It'll be Deep State University Debate Club, and you will be part of the Deep State if you wear it. And I'm part of the Deep State. And so what QAnon is it believes that there is a deep state, other than, American voters who believe that this man is unfit to be president and he won't read, and that is a disqualifying characteristic in a president. And he also likes to break the law, with impunity. That's a problem for me. So that makes me deep state. But QAnon believes that there's this deep state that is saying this about him, and that they're saying this about him with no reason to say this about him, that he does read and that he is smart and that he has policies that work for coal miners and farmers. Where he's keeping them, I have no idea. But okay. And they also believe, and this is, we got a call during the break from somebody who didn't understand the reference to Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. So that plays into this stupid QAnon culty thing, right? The QAnon culty thing thinks that there is a worldwide giant child sex trafficking ring that is being protected by the deep state. And that Jeffrey Epstein was killed in prison by Hillary Clinton's murderous minions to protect her pedophile ring, which she was running out of Comet Pizza Parlor and Ping Pong. Right? Right. That's how sick this is. But it's going mainstream now. I mean, this is sort of like the Tea Party on mushrooms. Really. This is, what would have happened to the Tea Party if they all shot up meth?
You can find them among the thousands at the president's rallies.
Do you think there are a lot of other QAnon supporters here at this rally?
Incredible amount. We just walked by. Yeah.
Wearing homemade T-shirts and holding handwritten signs. They're supporters of a radical online conspiracy theory known as QAnon.
What does QAnon stand for? What do you all believe?
I believe that somebody who's trying to awaken the public to what's really going on in the world.
For believers, Q is an anonymous government official who posts classified information about a covert battle between the president and a malicious ring of celebrities, political elites, and the so-called deep state.
Do you believe there's a ring of high-profile politicians who are kidnapping and sacrificing children?
I do believe that.
I think that Hillary Clinton has actually been arrested at one point.
I do.
And you believe we just don't know about it? Why?
Because you guys don't want us to know.
It's a wide-ranging conspiracy theory that's moved from voters to a growing number of political candidates.
Oh, no.
I hope I can get your vote. Republican candidate Matthew Lusk is running for Congress in Florida's 5th District.
Florida.
I like to put a Q on the back of my sign.
Among the dozens of issues listed on his campaign website is QAnon.
I think there are pedophile rings in the government bureaucracy.
Sorry, can you just, I couldn't hear the last part.
Yeah, I think there are pedophile rings. Oh, God. In the federal bureaucracy in D.C. I think there are pedophile rings there.
And he's not alone. Although it's unclear how much of it they believe, at least 4 candidates running in primaries for Congress have promoted messages affiliated with QAnon, either through campaign Twitter accounts or in person.
So to just ask you plainly, do you believe in QAnon?
I believe there is someone out there putting information on the internet.
Here in California's 36th district, congressional primary candidate Aaron Cruz has a banner displayed at the local Republican Party headquarters.
People have described QAnon as a conspiracy theory. Do you believe that?
You know, a conspiracy theory only sounds crazy until it's proven.
Do you think that a candidate who wants to win in 2020 can afford to dismiss QAnon believers?
I would say no. You shouldn't be dismissing individuals like QAnon supporters or believers.
But FBI experts have warned of the theory, saying it might motivate people to take criminal or even violent action. In July, a 24-year-old man was charged in the shooting death of a reputed mob boss. His attorneys argued he was motivated by QAnon. Written on his hand in the courtroom were QAnon symbols. But for many supporters,
where we go one, we go all.
Q is simply a means to the truth.
Mainstream media. That's where the BS, if you will, comes into play.
So you think Q is real, but the mainstream media is fake?
For the most part, yes, absolutely.
Part of a message that's won before.
How twisted is this one? This is unbelievable. I mean, we had the birthers, right? And Donald Trump was the leader of that. And then we had the Obama is a Muslim, and Donald Trump was part of that. And now we've got a global pedophile ring where kids are being kidnapped and sacrificed by a global elite that is being covered up for by Hillary Clinton. And what's crazy is they're out there running on it, just like the Tea Party. Remember the Tea Party? They ran on all this debt and deficit, and it was so bad, and it was going to destroy the country, and it was just a horror. And Obama was doing it to us, and he was a secret Muslim, and he was destroying the United States on behalf of the Muslim nations of the world. Yeah, okay. So now they have this where they say that the deficits and the debt is just fine because Donald Trump ran it up in order to give billionaires, the elite, a tax cut and pin the debt onto them, right? The ordinary working class QAnon believer. That's fine now. Now it's about pedophilia and pedophile rings, sexual abuse, sexual assault. But their president is a person who has been accused legitimately of rape more than once. So what is all this projection? I mean, I don't really understand how they have the nerve to do this. But listen, these movements in this country, these really pathetic ones about, Muslims are bad and pedophilia is only done by one party, I mean, I can't for the life of me explain to you how they get there or why they want to go there or what it is that makes them feel comfortable saying this as a legitimate adult. I don't know why they would put that kind of a symbol on an innocent baby. I don't understand why they would run on this platform of madness, but they are. And you know what's really crazy? Do you know how many GOP members are gone? When Donald Trump took office, there were 241 members of the grand old pedophiles in that. I mean, Jim Jordan, come on. You want to talk about covering up pedophilia? There's your guy right there. We just had breaking news from the referee on the wrestling team who said, yeah, we all told Jim Jordan, and he shrugged. He didn't care. This is the culture. This is what we do. So, I don't know. Anyway, but we had 241 GOP, grand old pedophile, House members when Trump came in. Now, 100 of them are gone. 100. They're running, but not for office. They're running from him, obviously. And these new people that are coming in are these conspiracy dudes. It's kind of freaky.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Name a time where conservatives have disrupted even the furthest leftists on a college campus. Right? It doesn't happen that way. We're willing to listen. We're willing to listen. See what I mean? And that is the problem. And the reason oftentimes it doesn't make sense to do the Q&A is not because we're not willing to talk about the questions, because we do. No. It's because people hijack it with nonsense looking to go for some sort of soundbite. You have people spreading nonsense, spreading hate to try to take over that room. That's the real issue in the room.
Because you're not making your parents proud by being rude and disruptive and discourteous. We are happy to answer a question. Respect the people around you so that they can hear. You don't play by the same rules. Let me tell you something. I bet you engage and go on online dating because you're impressing no one here to get a date in person.
Wow, that was amazing. That was, Donald Trump Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle being triggered by the crowd that they attracted with a book called Triggered. It's like rain on your wedding day. You know what I'm saying? It's the height of irony. But I will say something to her, okay? If you're going to insult the incels wearing a leather dress, that is not a smart move. At least, incels are very freaking violent. Elliot Rodgers was one of the most violent, hateful, videotaped incels in the history of incels. Not that they have a long one, but their short little history is replete with insane amounts of violence. Kimberly, if you're going to incite the incels, try to, if you're going to appear before them, try and keep them happy. You're appearing before neo-Nazis and white nationalists. You have to try and keep them happy. This makes no sense that they turn on their own crowd. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. These were all extremists that went to support Donald Trump Jr., and I guess the lesson here is if you're going to ride the hate wagon, the road is going to get awfully bumpy. It's very strange. I mean, they whip up all this stuff, and then when the stuff comes back and it just, splatters all over them, they're like upset. They're upset. Q&A. Well, he didn't want to, A the Q. He didn't want to. Shoe day in Oklahoma.
Hey, Randy, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank you for what you're doing. Great show. I just want to say, be careful when, lumping all QAnon supporters together. I'm actually hearing about the movement. I've heard about it a few times, hearing about it just now with your show. And there's some things that the people were saying, I believe, but I'm not necessarily a Donald Trump supporter. Have you ever heard of somebody named Al Bielek?
No.
ALBIEL, okay?
No.
So I'll come across this guy on YouTube, and I was going to say it real quick for why I believe some of the deep state stuff. And I talk about this guy a lot because I think people need to pay attention. I want to get in and out. But Al Bielek is a guy who died in 2011, and he said the claim of his life is that he accidentally time traveled. So there's tons of stuff about him, ALBIELEK.
Okay, all right. I don't want to promote your time traveler. Do you have
No. What was that? What were you saying?
I said I don't want to promote your time traveler.
I'm not. What I'm trying to say is one of the
You're
thoughts he put out
spelling
there
your
was,
time traveler's name. I don't need to promote a time traveler.
I thought you wanted to hear it, but listen.
No.
One of the thoughts he put out there that makes me kind of, I'm always questioning, that's why I'm watching your show. He said he accidentally went to 2137. I didn't believe him. I'm discrediting him. And one of the things he said was he saw that the news was changed. That's how he knew he was something was wrong. He said, "Well, they told him sometime during your last century." Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sometime during your last century, which is our current time period, he said the people began to distrust the news. So I found that interesting. That was before Trump ever ran. At the time, I was always raised on trust the news, listen to the news. I was like, why would
oh,
people
please. I've been in media my entire adult life, okay? And the idea that the entire talk radio scenario became nothing but conservative BS, that happened before 2011. So he didn't go
Really?
Yeah, really, it did. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of hours on AM talk radio that are nothing but conservative BS every day, all day. And that's been going on for a really long time. Oh, since 1997 or 8, when Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Deregulation Act. That was 1996. And by 1998, there were no more mom and pop radio stations. Nothing was local anymore. Everything was broadcast nationally. It was Rush Limbaugh, and then you had Glenn Beck, and then you had Sean Hannity, and it was like endless hours of complete and utter bullcrap. Complete lies, covering up for Newt Gingrich's affair when he was accusing Bill Clinton of having an affair, and covering up for Bob Livingston's affair when he was going to be the Speaker of the House because Newt Gingrich couldn't be the Speaker of the House because he was having an affair. Oh, please. This is not anything a time traveler who went to whatever year you said, 2137. I mean, come on, give me a break. You want to talk pedophilia, Q people. You don't really have to look very far. Okay, you got your Jim Jordan, who is covering up for Dr. Strauss, who was a degenerate pedophile, who was molesting 15-year-old boys repeatedly, like 177. There's 43 of these boys that are part of a lawsuit currently against Ohio State. And Jim Jordan is covering all that up. Brett Kavanaugh, in his confirmation hearings, was accused of raping young girls. Roy Moore, when he was running for Senate in Alabama, was accused of molesting young girls. And Donald Trump, there's tape of him saying that at the Miss Teen USA pageant, that he would go and inspect them. He's best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. They were best freaking friends. Donald Trump said he would date his own freaking daughter. Oh, please, give me a break with this craziness, okay? This is just like the Tea Party. You were all out there with your lunch. What's his name? Joe the plumber, and crazy Sarah Palin, and all these people. They were having babies out of wedlock, but they were the family values people. I mean, you have to tell yourself so much swill in order to go down this bad road with these terrible people who lie to your face and disrespect you every single day when they do it. Rich in Michigan.
You go, girl.
Thank you.
I love it. I'm laughing my butt off.
It's just crazy. It's crazy.
I've seen the videos with Trump and Epstein, at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, with the white man's over by looking at the girls, pointing out which ones they're going to conquer.
all the young girls and cracking little jokes of what they want to do and and I've seen pictures of Trump sitting with his daughter that looked incredibly erotic. And you're scratching your head going, that's his daughter, man.
But why is everybody around him a pedophile? Everyone is. And this is like the main crux of the Q conspiracy crowd, is that there's this global pedophile ring, human trafficking.
Birds of a feather flock together.
Or something with an F together. They do something together with an F. And it's gross. It's gross. I mean, could you please look inward just a tad, just a touch, you little Q freaks? Well, it's true. Somebody's posting on the internet. How do you know it's not me? I mean, come on.
Oh! This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
all of this sort of conjures up a notion of all of these Republicans, the senators in particular, who are basically aiding and abetting in President Trump's crimes because they're trying to bury them. They know that crimes against the United States have been committed. And real quickly, one sentence from this big old blue book that you and I have talked about before. This is the criminal code that has all of our federal laws in the country. An accessory after the fact is one sentence. And here's how it reads, Joy. It says, whoever, knowing that an offense against the United States has been committed, receives, relieves, comforts, or assists the offender in order to hinder or prevent his apprehension, trial, or punishment is an accessory after the fact. And you know what? Every politician who stands up knowing that the president committed a crime against the United States and says the president did nothing wrong, they lie to the American people, that's really no different than just hiding the president in the basement of their house to try to keep law enforcement from rightfully getting their hands on the president. Now, you might say, well, it's hyperbolic to say all of these Republicans who lie to the American people and say the president committed no crime. It's too much for us to get our arms around. Too many crimes are being committed. And it's a lot like littering or speeding. Well, I would say, not that it's too much crime to get our arms around. It's too much crime not to get our arms around. Yeah. This is something that we have to wrestle to the ground.
So basically what the Republicans are going to do is aid and abet a lying criminal president who, for his own self-enrichment, for his own personal interests, was violating the foreign policy of the United States government. Just for his own interest, he was extorting a vulnerable new president of an American ally. Every branch of our government, from the House to the Senate to the Department of Defense to the State Department, all agreed that this money needed to be deployed, needed to go to Ukraine, should not be withheld, and the president decided that he was going to use it as his own personal slush fund in order to extort a favor from the new president of Ukraine, Zelensky. This is so sick, I can't even tell you. And so every Republican who is going to, just in lockstep, refuse to vote for him to be indicted, and then the trial in the Senate where they refuse to vote to have him removed, they are all accessories after the fact. Okay. And that's why I keep on telling you what you're going to see if this is a country of justice and law and order, the way that Republicans have been screaming and hiding behind the flag and hugging the flag. Law and order, right? If this is what this country is about at long last, there will be a giant RICO violation. And every single person who ignores the evidence does so at their own peril. Every single person who lies to the American people about his complicity, about his extortion, about his law breaking is going to be an accessory after the fact. You can't impeach House members. So they have to go to court. That's the only remedy for that. You can't take the president to court, according to the Department of Justice OLC memo, Office of Legal Counsel memo, even if he murders you. The president, according to the Republicans, and I want you to think about this, Q people especially, conspiracy people especially, people who think that there is some sort of an elite deep state that is trying to allow for lawlessness to go unpunished in this country. I want you to think about what I'm about to tell you. The president of the United States is breaking the law, and the Republicans are willing to let him do it to protect themselves and any foreign money that they may have received or any information, compromise that Trump may have on them. For instance, a Lindsey Graham, it's possible there's something he doesn't want out there. A Mitch McConnell, it's possible that there's something he doesn't want out there about the transportation business, that his wife is in Chinese shipping. I don't know. Rick Perry certainly, did some crazy stuff in Ukraine with this Naftogaz board. We're finding out today that he had 2 donors that wanted on the Naftogaz board, the gas company you don't hear about, right? And they were mega donors to Trump, and they were mega donors to Rick Perry. And all of a sudden, they got positions on the Naftogaz board. All of a sudden, they got a 50-year contract with Naftogaz in Ukraine. Shortly after, Rick Perry went to Ukraine and gave a list of his preferred donors to President Zelensky. Nobody wants to cooperate. Nobody wants to be sworn. Mick Mulvaney doesn't want to be sworn. Rick Perry doesn't want to be sworn. Rudy Giuliani doesn't want to be sworn. They're all as if it's up to them whether or not you have to obey a subpoena. As if in a country with law and order as its mantra, these guys get to say whether or not they're going to answer a subpoena. They'll decide for themselves. Are you freaking kidding me? You think that there's an elite? There is. You think there's a swamp? It's Donald Trump's minions. These are the people with the dirtiest hands on the planet, and you gave them the levers of government to put their filthy, dirty hands on to protect themselves. You want to see corruption? You're seeing it now. You're seeing it now. The idea that this president could be, that the GOP will allow this president to be above the law should be sickening to you.
You're going to have a person above the law now. This will be the first time in 243 years where there's a group of politicians inside. They're saying, you know what, we're going to allow this one person to be above the law. Every other person's been subordinate to the law for the last 243 years, which has led to this great system of liberty and this great system of prosperity. But in order for us to stay in power, somebody's clearly broken the law, clearly doing dishonest things, very un-American things, I might add.
Yes.
You know, forget about the bullying and all the style points. I'm just talking about the illegality, Brian, that if they're going to allow that to take place, I think it's going to be very dangerous for the country.
It is very dangerous for the country because let me tell you something, little cult members. Your president isn't always going to be the president. And the next president, if he has character that's equal to or less than Donald Trump, but smarter, he can do so much damage to this here country. You know, Donald Trump's saving grace, believe it or not, is that he's an idiot and that all of his law breaking is in public. That you can see it, that you can hear it, that he's a moron, that he is the king of the universe in his own little universe where daddy handed him a whole lot of money. But as soon as Donald Trump has to obey the law and execute the law faithfully, he fails miserably because he's a moron. He's an absolute moron. He stands there and tells you, a guy who gave him $1 million, Gordon Sondland, who he then picked to be ambassador to the EU in the middle of Brexit and all this white supremacy and all these hopes and dreams and desires of Vladimir Putin to break up unions, especially the European one, so he can start knocking off these countries like Hungary and Poland. All these white supremacist countries now with Viktor Orban and crazy Nazi-like 1930s leaders, autocrats all over Europe. Break up the European Union. Disband NATO, which is the bulwark against Russian incursion into European nations, right? So he has to pick somebody, carefully consider somebody. He picks Gordon Sondland to be the ambassador to the EU and then had the nerve to stand there on Friday and tell you he doesn't even know him.
Sondland said at the beginning of September he presumed there was a quid pro quo. Then there was a telephone call to you on September the 9th. Had he ever talked to you prior to that telephone call?
Let me just tell you, I hardly know the gentleman, but this is the man who said there was no quid pro quo, and he still says that. And he said that, I said that. And he hasn't changed that testimony. So this is a man that said, as far as the president is concerned, there was no quid pro quo. Everybody that's testified, even the ones that are Trump haters, they've all been fined. They don't have anything.
Who are the Trump haters? Lieutenant Colonel Vindman is a Trump hater. H.R. McMaster is a Trump hater. Is Mattis a Trump hater? Who is a Trump hater that testified? Is Fiona Hill a Trump hater? Who is the Trump hater here? Is Bolton the Trump hater? I mean, these are all people he picked. These are Gordon Sondland gave this man $1 million. He doesn't know him. I mean, he disrespects you every time he lies to your face, and you allow it. And it makes me wonder, why do you let people treat you like that? What is in it for you to be stepped on in this manner? I can't understand how this is all right.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. Randi Rhodes.
Imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
It's important that the president has due process, and evidence is not a conclusion. We have enough evidence from the depositions that we've done to warrant bringing this forward, evidence of an extortion scheme using taxpayer dollars to ask a foreign government to investigate the president's opponent. But it's important that these witnesses raise their right hands and take questions from both Republicans and Democrats. The president is going to get that. It's important that the Republicans be afforded the opportunity to suggest witnesses that we should call and that we determine whether that is relevant. The facts are just as important as the process behind the facts as far as what, if anything, goes over to the Senate.
But do you expect anything new from these testimonies, or is it going to be a recitation of what we can read in these depositions already?
These witnesses have been fairly consistent, and for the most part, they've not been coordinating or talking to each other. But again, this is America, and we don't just have, railroading of justice. These witnesses, should come public, and, the American people should judge for themselves as well as we will as to, what happened here.
Are you ready for this? Because this is going to start on Wednesday, and that is everything that anybody is going to see on the TV. The entire media conglomeration of public broadcasting, private broadcasting, public airwaves, cable airwaves, satellite, everybody's going to turn their airwaves over to the House of Representatives. I mean, that's just it's a gimme. I already was looking to see who's covering. ABC's covering it, CBS, NBC, PBS. They're all preempting regularly scheduled shows. All the major cables, MSNBC, even Fox News is going to carry it. CNN is obviously, C-SPAN is obviously, and we will obviously. So everybody better be ready for this. And so that's why for the past, like the week before, not this week, but the week before, as these transcripts were being released, okay, I know people aren't going to read 300-page dumps and then another 300-page dump right after it when they release the testimony of Vindman. There were 15 witnesses, for God's sake, 15 so far that the House has deposed. And those 15, each of them had transcripts. And there's no way, just 15 times 300, that's how many pages you would have to have read. We tried to keep up with it as best we could. And the excerpts were pretty much, 11 pages, 13 pages per witness. So we tried to get you to understand what they're going to testify to this week so that when they do and they're cross-examined and their veracity is questioned and whether or not they're part of a deep state, are they pedophile, whatever the hell they come up with, because listen, this is so crazy. I can't even imagine what would have happened if we did something like this. But Jim Jordan, who's covering up for a dead wrestling coach at Ohio State University, Dr. Strauss, where 43 boys have brought a lawsuit claiming that Jim Jordan knew all this was going on, that this man was drugging and raping 15-year-olds, that this man was masturbating in the shower in front of them, that this man was, reaching for their genitalia when they had a, broken toenail, right? That all this was going on, that Jim Jordan knew. So all of a sudden, in the middle of all this last week, the Republicans had an idea. A light went off. Let's put Jim Jordan on the Intelligence Committee. A man who is compromised on this issue of pedophilia with a live lawsuit pending. Let's put him on the Intelligence Committee so that he can fight for his life, because if he lets this thing go and Trump doesn't approve of his performance, perhaps they will at the Justice Department do something about Jim Jordan's covering up of a pedophile. And B, he can tell the president everything he's hearing in the cloakroom, everything he's hearing on strategy, along with Devin Nunes. I mean, this is such the fix is so in with these Republicans that it's kind of freaking amazing. So they did. They put Jim Jordan on the Intelligence Committee. Jim Jordan was not on the Intelligence Committee until this weekend. And then all of a sudden, he's part of the Intelligence Committee. There is going to be a waterfall of evidence that is going to clearly show that the President of the United States upended American foreign policy as decided by his own cabinet members, his State Department, his Department of Defense, his House, his Senate, which were Republican, both of those bodies until this last election, and everybody agreed that this money should go to Ukraine. No, there was no corruption, and the only corruption he was interested in had to do with Joe Biden and CrowdStrike, a California company that does forensics on computer hacks. Okay. And so we're about to hear all this, but you're gonna see these Republicans aid and abet. You're gonna see them twist themselves into pretzels, trying to make this about somebody else. They need a foil. They need somebody to take the blame for what Donald Trump did. And of course they want it to be Hillary Clinton. They do. They want it to be Hillary Clinton, an oldie but a goodie. They want it to be CrowdStrike, an oldie but a goodie. They want debunked conspiracy theories front and center. They're going to bring up Nellie Orr, who was like a secretary at Fusion GPS. They're going to bring her up. I mean, they will do whatever they have to do to to distract people from the fact that the president is a criminal.
There's an overwhelming cascade of evidence, and so this week will be the starting of that waterfall. Mm-hmm. It's one thing when things are behind closed doors and you're doing an investigation. It's another thing when it's open theater and you can actually see the rank lawlessness of what's gone on and the lack of constitutionality in the process with the president. And I think it's not just a Ukrainian call. There will be other elements of this story that unfold where people will say, okay, wait a minute, there's a combination of incompetence, there's a combination of a destruction of the executive branch of the United States, in addition to the lawlessness and traitorous-like behavior. So
traitorous-like behavior?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, if you're
strong word, Anthony.
Well, what word would you use? You're on the phone with the president of the Ukraine, and you're strong-arming him to have him go after your political opponent. Okay, that is, you're become a traitor to the Constitution and a traitor to the laws of the United States. So do you want to pretend that it's not traitorous behavior? We can pretend that it isn't, and we can continue to gaslight. I think one of the big problems that the American people have in this situation is we have such respect for the American presidency and the institution of that presidency. The man in that office right now is the successor to Abraham Lincoln. George Washington. And so we have a tendency to normalize something that is very abnormal. And so as he continues to gaslight, we have to call him into account for what is actually going on. No, this is full-blown traitorous activity. And once it gets exposed, then it'll be up to the American people. What I'm shocked by, as we sit here today, a couple of days after Election Day, I am shocked that Republican leadership have not disavowed this person. I'm just shocked that they would put their partisan interests and their self-preservation to stay in power over the law and the system of the United States that has led to such prosperity and such freedom for so many people.
Maybe because they're all compromised. Maybe they all have little stories like, I don't know, like Jim Jordan. Maybe they all have stories. Maybe everybody got a little bit of foreign money. You know, one of the things that Giuliani's associates, who are now facing jail time, did, or they're accused of doing, is funneling Russian money to GOP members of Congress. Now, we know Pete Sessions received some money. We know Bob Livingston received some money. Who else received some money? Why was Rand Paul running over to Russia? Do you know what I'm saying? We don't know who's got what in their dank closet, but the GOP will be performing like People's Choice Award level performances, Oscar-worthy performances, on Wednesday to an audience of one.
It's Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
This is like the fake dossier. This is like everything else. These are crooked people. They lost an election, and they lost it big. It was really a landslide from the Electoral College standpoint.
A landslide?
And they lost it big, and they still haven't recovered, and they're going to lose again. And what they're trying to do is weaken me, but it's actually made me stronger. And interestingly, if you look at the polls that just came out, my polls are up. The fundraising is through the roof. It's never been this high. We just said fundraise because people are angry about it. And it's made Republicans and people that vote for me, not just Republicans, really angry. We really become angry because it's a hoax. And I'll tell you, the whistleblower, I call him the fake whistleblower. He gave a fake report of my phone call. And when I did it, all of a sudden, when I released that call, all of a sudden, everybody disappeared. The whistleblower disappeared. Whatever happened to the second whistleblower? Why isn't the first whistleblower going to testify anymore? You know why? Because everything he wrote in that report almost was a lie. Because he made a phony phone call. My phone call was perfect. He made it sound bad. That's why I had to release. Now, so the whistleblower is a disgrace to our country.
Oh my God.
A disgrace. And the whistleblower, because of that, should be revealed. And his lawyer, who said the worst things possible 2 years ago, he should be sued. And maybe for treason. Maybe for treason. But he should be sued. His lawyer is a disgrace. A disgrace. And then ask him this. Where is the second whistleblower, right? Where is the witness that gave the whistleblower the information? They all disappeared because Adam Schiff is a corrupt politician. He's corrupt. He made up a speech and he put my voice in it. He made up a speech. Had nothing to do with what I said. Adam Schiff is a corrupt politician that's not giving us due process, not giving us lawyers. And despite all that, we're kicking their ass.
It's sad. That's all I can say. He's a sad, bad man. There's no question that his intellect is, below par for a president of the free world. I mean, there's just no question that he does absolutely nothing except point at other people to take some sort of blame for the stuff that he does, okay? Using this office to enrich himself, taking his daughter to get Chinese copyrights, and yet he points at Joe Biden's son, where there's been no evidence of anything at all. He says Joe Biden's son took $1.5 billion out of China. Okay, that's just a lie. It never happened. None of it ever happened. He lives in we're through the looking glass with him. 2 and 2 is 5. Okay, and everybody that is trying to hold him accountable for law breaking is the lawbreaker. Up is down, freedom is slavery, war is peace, and ignorance is knowledge. It's just an ass backwards world. He is the most insane person to ever hold this office. He's a person who tries to tell you over and over again that he's making your life better, although 2/3 of us don't feel any better. In fact, the few things that we have to pay for, that are killing us, he won't do anything about. He won't do one thing about health care. Not one freaking thing. We need infrastructure. He won't do one freaking thing on infrastructure. We need an increase in the minimum wage. He won't do one freaking thing on minimum wage. We need child care so that when we do go to work for the freaking minimum wage, the child care doesn't cost more than we earn. He won't do anything on child. And yet he stands there. I'm a friend of the common man. I'm a friend of the coal miner. Meanwhile, all the regulations that he turned back right now are causing, polluted coal slush, coal slurry into the crystal clean drinking water. All these things that he gave to these, titans of coal, the Murrays of the world, right? They still went bankrupt They still close shop. You got like 6 to 8 coal companies just declaring bankruptcy. And why do they do that? Why do they declare bankruptcy? To stiff those workers out of their pension funds that they put aside paycheck after paycheck after paycheck after paycheck, year after year after year after year. And now they can't get their pension fund because that's the first thing that you get relief from when you go to a bankruptcy court. How in the world are people being stupefied by the P.T. Barnum nature of this, unbelievably disrespectful, classless man? For me, if anybody talked to me like that, there is no way. I would just say, you picked the wrong girl. You just don't get to lie to my face in this manner. Steve in Vermont.
Randy.
Yes, sir.
First off, I want everyone to buy a stinking podcast. This is the only place that I can get what's really happening. But I called to ask you a question and to tap your honorary law degree because I haven't been able to get the answer.
Okay.
This question is, if the obvious happens, Trump gets impeached, and the second obvious happens that he doesn't get removed, and God forbid the Russians put him back in office for a second term, can he be impeached again?
Yeah.
My understanding is that he can't be impeached twice.
Yes, he can. You can impeach him every day, all day. Yeah, because this is not a criminal proceeding. Double jeopardy and all that stuff doesn't apply here. This is the only remedy, according to the OLC, who doesn't want the president brought into court. See, if the president was brought into court and they tried him for these things and he was acquitted, end of story. No, you couldn't do it again. Double jeopardy. But the Constitution just says that impeachment is the proper venue to hold the president accountable, and that the Senate is the sole trier of fact. So if they wanted to, I would promise you they won't, because politically it would be terrible. The country wouldn't stand for it. But there's no criminal procedure here that needs to be followed. This is, the House and the Senate, and they make the rules.
So theoretically, then, if we take back the Senate and we hold the House, then we could impeach him overnight.
Yeah, they could have another vote on articles and they could have another trial, but I don't think the country would sit still for it. But one of the things that might happen is we could, somehow work the clock so that the trial doesn't happen until after the election, and then we'll see what we get.
You just made my life. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome. No, there's no criminal procedure that has to be followed in the House or the Senate. There isn't any. And when you hear of guys like Rand Paul talk about a Sixth Amendment right to confront your accuser, first of all, no. And second of all, that happens in the Senate, not the House. At trial, not during indictment.
Clear your mind.
Roger Stone, one of the president's longest-serving political advisors, longtime friend of the president, has now been found guilty on 7 counts of lying to Congress and tampering with a witness. This is a spin-off of Robert Mueller's investigation. He's now facing up to 20 years in prison, as you see him heading into the courtroom with his wife earlier this morning. I want to go straight to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, with the latest on that verdict.
George, you're correct. This is 7 federal felonies that Roger Stone has been convicted of, all dealing with the fact that he lied to Congress about his efforts to get the information that WikiLeaks was going to provide concerning dirt about Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election. And why did he do it? Prosecutors in the case this week in their closing arguments pointed out to the fact that he did it to protect the president, or then candidate Donald Trump. Let me give you a statement from the closing arguments. Quote, Stone knew that if his information came out, it would likely look really bad for his longtime associate, Donald Trump. So he lied to the committee. So again, George, this is a confidant of the president, a man who described himself as a so-called dirty trickster, one who loved Richard Nixon, who's now been convicted of 7 federal felonies and now facing prison time, George.
Testimony during the trial included evidence of phone calls between Roger Stone and the president during the campaign where the president was being informed about what WikiLeaks may or may not have been doing. That testimony came from the president's former deputy campaign manager, Rick Gates.
I know nothing.
He knows nothing. So that's a fatality, isn't it, everybody?
Fatality.
Let's start keeping a tote board, okay? Roger Stone found guilty this morning on all 7 counts that he was charged with. 7 felonies. 7. It's a 67-year-old dirty trickster that started with Richard Nixon and has been perverting our political system ever since. And finally, a jury had a chance to hear what he does for a living, find out how he lies to Congress, find out that he, protects the corrupt and goes to the mat for them and will tamper with witnesses, intimidate our friend Randy Credico, threaten to kill him, threaten to take his dog, all this to keep him quiet. And then at the same time, we have the testimony of Marie Yovanovitch on Capitol Hill, and she's testifying. And as she's testifying, Donald Trump is intimidating the witness. He's tweeting about her and just smearing her, besmirching her, defaming her in real time. This is what corrupt people do when the bar of justice becomes very close to their little heads. Okay, instead of, pounding the law, the law's on my side. Instead of pounding the facts will show I did not. They pound the table and they denigrate the witnesses. They attack the messenger. That's what Roger Stone, one of his felonies, was today. Attacking Randy Credico, attacking a messenger, witness tampering, forcing Randy Credico to take the Fifth Amendment in front of Congress because he was terrified that Roger Stone would actually have him whacked and steal his freaking dog. And when Randy Credico was telling Roger Stone, I can't operate like this. I cannot do this kind of thing. He said, no one cares. No one cares whether or not I'm asking you to take the fall for me and Donald Trump, who obviously were colluding with the Russians who stole hacked material, fenced it through WikiLeaks, and Roger Stone was the intermediary between the Trump campaign and Julian Assange, and Julian Assange lied about where he got that material. He got it from the Russians, okay? So I don't know if the president's going to pardon Roger Stone, but I will tell you it was weird that Judge Berman let Roger Stone leave the courtroom. So he's out there somewhere. I don't know if he's, at the airport buying a one-way ticket to, Austria, like Parnas and I don't know. But this is an amazing day. So we have that. We have the second appeals court ruling that Donald Trump must produce his tax returns. Mazars, who has his tax returns, are indeed allowed and required to produce the president's tax returns to the district attorney in Manhattan for their investigation into Trump's, fraud with regard to paying off Stormy Daniels and the McDougal girl who had the worst taste in the world, beautiful girl, literally fell in love with this monster. So there's that. Tomorrow or today, behind closed doors, the deposition of a guy named David Holmes is being secured. David Holmes is the person that Ambassador Bill Taylor, who replaced Marie Yovanovitch over in Ukraine, because Mike Pompeo picked him. Donald Trump picked Mike Pompeo, and Donald Trump asked Bill Taylor to take Marie Yovanovitch's place in Ukraine because they smeared her, defamed her, and ran her out of town so that Parnas and Fruman and Giuliani could start some, business that they wanted to start in Naftogaz, right? They wanted to corrupt Ukraine. They were introducing even more corruption. And we know this because Parnas and Fruman have been indicted. So they're criminals. And they were criminals then. So we have that. She's testifying today, and I tell you, even the people over at Fox News, Chris Wallace said, if you're not moved by the testimony of Marie Yovanovitch today, you don't have a pulse. Seriously, dude. And so while she's testifying, the president defames her. He starts tweeting out a storm. Adam Schiff actually sees the tweets and reads them to her.
Mr. Kent, is pressuring Ukraine to conduct what I believe you've called...
Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Mr. Yovanovitch, as we sit here testifying, the president is attacking you on Twitter. And I'd like to give you a chance to respond. I'll read
in real time
one of his tweets.
He's intimidating
Everywhere
a witness.
Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad. She started off in Somalia. How did that go? He goes on to say later in the tweet, is a U.S. president's absolute right to appoint ambassadors. First of all, Ambassador Yovanovitch, the Senate has a chance to confirm or deny an ambassador, do they not?
Yes, advise and consent.
But would you like to respond to the president's attack that everywhere you went turned bad?
Well, I don't think I have such powers, not in Mogadishu, Somalia, and not in other places. I actually think that where I've served over the years, I and others have demonstrably made things better, for the U.S. as well as for the countries that I've served in. Ukraine, for example, where there are huge challenges, including, on the issue that we're discussing today of corruption. Huge challenges, but they've made a lot of progress since 2014, including in the years that I was there. And I think in part, the Ukrainian people get the most credit for that. But a part of that credit goes to the work of the United States and to me as the ambassador in Ukraine.
Ambassador, you've shown the courage to come forward today and testify. Notwithstanding the fact you were urged by the White House or State Department not to.
Yep.
Notwithstanding the fact that, as you testified earlier, the president implicitly threatened you in that call record. And now the president in real time is attacking you. What effect do you think that has on other witnesses' willingness to come forward and expose wrongdoing?
Well, it's very intimidating.
Ah, there you have it.
Designed to intimidate, is it not?
I can't speak to what the president is trying to do, but I think the effect is to be intimidating.
Oh! Well, I want to let you know, Ambassador, that some of us here take witness intimidation very, very seriously.
He's doing it in real time. Roger Stone was just convicted of witness tampering and witness intimidation. She's being intimidated in real time as she's under oath testifying. It's a pattern and a practice. This is the most corrupt White House ever. And that's saying something.
Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, as things deteriorate for the President of the United States and the GOP comes up empty with a defense for any of this, corruption that he has not only engaged in, but encourages. I mean, how many people are going to go to jail for this guy? It's amazing. And, here I'm going to play the live testimony, but I just want you to keep in mind as you're watching it that everybody around Richard Nixon went to jail except for Richard Nixon, okay? And this is what Trump is counting on, that everybody will go to jail for him except for him. It's a very sick scenario that's playing out in this man's mind. But let's listen to the live testimony. This is part 2 of Maria Yovanovitch's day in front of the House Intelligence Committee. Of course, Adam Schiff right now is asking her some questions. We'll listen in and see how long this goes.
Not blowing the whistle, we wouldn't be here. And I think it is appalling that my colleagues continue to want to out this whistleblower so that he or she can be punished by this president. But let's underscore once again, while you are the beginning of this story, you're not the end of it, but nonetheless the beginning is important because the beginning of the story is an effort to get you out of the way, an effort by Rudy Giuliani and Fruman and Parnas and corrupt Ukrainians like Lutsenko to get you out of the way because they felt you were an impediment to these political investigations the president so desperately wanted. Giuliani has made it abundantly clear he was in Ukraine on a mission for his client, for the president, to investigate the Bidens. And you were viewed as an obstacle that had to go, not just by Giuliani, but by the President of the United States. And if people had any doubt about it, they should do what the President asks, read the transcript. And what they'll see in that transcript is the President praises the corrupt. He praises the corrupt, Lutsenko. He condemns the just, you. And then he asks for an investigation of the Bidens. There is no camouflaging that corrupt intent. We are adjourned.
Mr. Speaker, I'll speak on condition.
We are.
Mr. Chairman, you disparaged those members on this side of the aisle. We should have a chance to respond to your disparaging remarks.
They're applauding.
Mr. Chairman, I demand or seek. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
All right, you get the drift. It's that is the end of the testimony of Marie Yovanovitch. Now, this went on all morning long, and it actually is the melding of the previous testimony that we heard from Ambassador Bill Taylor, who took her place. And it is the melding together of the facts that were laid out by George Kent, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Ukraine. And this is only day 2 of the impeachment inquiry. That's all that we've seen so far is 3 witnesses, and they were all devastating to Donald Trump. The Republicans continue to spin this crazy conspiracy theory about Ukraine and a server, and they hid it, and that the Bidens were really the corrupt ones, and that there was a cover-up to benefit the Biden. Although I will tell you, George Kent testified that he thought that Biden being on the board of a Ukrainian gas company while his father was the vice president of the United States could create a conflict of interest. She said the same damn thing in her testimony today. So that aside, they asked whether or not any crimes were committed by Hunter Biden. They all agree no crimes were committed. And in fact, they lay out the process by which, if a crime had been committed by an American citizen in Ukraine, the U.S. Embassy had law enforcement present, FBI agents present, intelligence community contacts that would then have investigated any American citizen who was doing corrupt things in a country where the charge was for our ambassadors to decorrupt, to engage in anti-corruption efforts so that Ukraine could become part of Europe, could become part of NATO, could become part of the West, and could attract foreign business interests from countries all over the world because they had engaged in anti-corruption efforts. That is what all of these State Department officials, all of these ambassadors do at their embassies wherever they are in the world. So they are heroes. They are silent. They are government employees who spend their time educating themselves on the countries that they're going to represent, who learn languages of the countries they're going to represent, who get master's degrees in foreign relations and foreign policy, who study and work their tails off, and then finally get their dream job of representing this country overseas for a government salary. I mean, it is really a thankless job. But Marie Yovanovitch this morning testified that Rudy Giuliani was relying on the exact corrupt officials for this bogus claim about Hunter Biden that ignored corruption in Ukraine.
Mr. Giuliani should have known those claims were suspect, coming as they reportedly did from individuals with questionable motives and with reason to believe that their political and financial ambitions would be stymied by our anti-corruption policy in Ukraine. After being asked by the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs in early March 2019 to extend my tour until 2020, The smear campaign against me entered a new public phase in the United States. In the wake of the negative press, State Department officials suggested an earlier departure, and we agreed upon July 2019. I was then abruptly told, just weeks later in late April, to come back to Washington from Ukraine on the next plane. At the time I departed, Ukraine had just concluded game-changing presidential elections. It was a sensitive period with much at stake for the United States and called for all the experience and expertise we could muster. When I returned to the United States, Deputy Secretary of State Sullivan told me there had been a concerted campaign against me, that the president no longer wished me to serve as ambassador to Ukraine, and that in fact, the president had been pushing for my removal since the prior summer. As Mr. Sullivan recently recounted during his Senate confirmation hearing, neither he nor anyone else ever explained or sought to justify the president's concerns about me, nor did anyone in the department justify my early departure by suggesting I had done something wrong. I appreciate that Mr. Sullivan publicly affirmed at his hearing that I had served capably and admirably. Although then and now, I have always understood that I served at the pleasure of the president, I still find it difficult to comprehend that foreign and private interests were able to undermine U.S. interests in this way. Individuals who apparently felt stymied by our efforts to promote stated U.S. policy against corruption, that is, to do our mission.
So there you have her testifying about a months-long, even longer than we suspected, campaign to remove her by Rudy Giuliani, Parnas, Furman, who are now indicted for funneling Russian money into the elections, and then trying to intimidate her into silence.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
And was it Mr. Lutsenko, among others, who coordinated with Mr. Giuliani to peddle false accusations against you as well as the Bidens?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Whoops.
And were these smears also amplified by the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., as well as certain hosts on Fox?
Yes, yes, that is the case.
In the face of this smear campaign, did colleagues at the State Department try to get a statement of support for you from Secretary Pompeo?
Yes.
Were they successful?
No.
Did you come to learn that they couldn't issue such a statement because they feared it would be undercut by the president?
Yes.
I mean, this is devastating stuff. You have the president's personal attorney using $400 million of taxpayer dollars to dangle in front of a country that is in a hot war, a real shooting war. People are dying, literally dying. The testimony from Ambassador Bill Taylor, who replaced her, is that people were dying this week. People were dying in Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers were facing Russian aggression and dying. Now, imagine that American soldiers were facing aggression by Russian soldiers here in the United States. And that all of a sudden, the president is using the ability for our soldiers to defend themselves as some sort of an official act that he will not complete, giving them their defense systems unless and until somebody, gives him, a false statement about Hunter Biden. I mean, this is how crass this is. This is how corrupt this is. This is how low he goes. This is how self-serving these people are. I mean, it's just so now Roger Stone is in jail, guilty of 7 felonies. Rudy Giuliani's going to go to jail too. I don't know. Was the president going to preemptively pardon everybody? This is so sick. And all of the questions about was Giuliani doing anything to promote U.S. national security?
Attempted bribery isn't in.
Oh, she's so.
Was Mr. Giuliani promoting U.S. national interests or policy in Ukraine, Ambassador?
I don't think so, ma'am.
Mr. Kent?
No, he was not.
What interests do you believe he was promoting, Mr. Kent?
I believe he was looking to dig up
political dirt against a potential rival in the next election cycle?
Oh, Jesus, God. Oh, my. For the love of...
Oh, for God's sake.
Seriously. All right, so here's some more of the testimony from today. We've already seen that the president in real time is intimidating the witness, that he's tweeting bad things about her. We already know that his perfect call included comments that were demeaning, degrading, and defamatory because they were false, and he knew they were false, about her, saying she was bad news and she's about to go through some things. This is what he said on his perfect call transcript. Now, we don't have the whole call, as you know. Can you imagine what they deleted and didn't release? Okay? But that part that was released actually had this in it, that he was threatening her, defaming her, smearing her, talking to the president of Ukraine and saying she's bad news and she's about to go through some things. Okay, and so then we know while she's testifying, the idiot boy is tweeting at her, not understanding that is witness intimidation, not understanding what he's doing in real time is a felony, not even comprehending that. So the counsel for our side, Dan Goldman, he asked her, how are you coping? How are you dealing?
You were one of the most senior diplomats in the State Department. You've been there for 33 years.
33.
You've won numerous awards. You've been appointed as an ambassador 3 times by both Republican and Democratic presidents. And the State Department would not issue a statement in support of you against false allegations because they were concerned about a tweet from the President of the United States?
That's my understanding.
Mr. Goldman, if I could follow up on that question, it seems like an appropriate time. Ambassador Yovanovitch, as we sit here testifying, the president is attacking you on Twitter.
Honestly, this is just, this is bizarre. This is just, you have a president who is completely unaware of the crimes that he is committing in real time because I'm sure, Mr. Cipollini over at the White House counsel told him, I wouldn't do that, Mr. President. That's witness intimidation. He doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't even want to be warned. He doesn't even want to be informed. He doesn't even want to be told that what he's about to do is a felony. They're just going to tack all this onto the articles of impeachment now. I mean, this is crazy. But, I want to play you an exchange. This is the longest, I don't think we have time in this segment. How many minutes do I have left here? Yeah, like 2. All right. When we come back, I want to play you a longer segment of Adam Schiff questioning Marie Yovanovitch and setting the record straight because you have these lunatic Republicans who are saying really dumb things. They're saying things like, this is all hearsay. This is all secondhand. Nobody spoke to the president. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Rudy Giuliani was, off on his own. Obviously, that's not true. Obviously, the president has said that Rudy Giuliani is his attorney. Obviously, the president has said he's a great guy. Obviously, the president knew. Obviously, the president met with Parnas and Fruman many, many times. There was testimony about dinners where they all sat down together and they talked about their plans to get rid of her with the president present, with Rudy Giuliani present, with Parnas present, with Fruman present, but he doesn't know them. I never met them. I don't know them. You have to ask Rudy. Rudy's my attorney. I mean, this is like the same repetitive pattern with this president. Pattern and practice is something that's admissible in a court of law. And oh, by the way, so is hearsay. Now, let me give you an example of hearsay. So I'm cooking dinner in the kitchen. And Howard is in the living room, and Howard says, the president is on the TV. Now, I can't hear the TV because I'm in the kitchen. Do I have a reasonable ability to rely on the fact that Howard sees the president on the TV? Yes, I do. So that's hearsay. But a very good lawyer can almost always get a reliable witness's hearsay admitted into a court. So, every defense that they have dreamt up, they're all falling apart. Also, the defense Lindsey Graham has, which is he's just not going to read any of the transcripts. He's just not going to watch any of the impeachment hearings. And, oh, by the way, these are all Democratic witnesses that have only been called by Democrats and da-da-da-da-da. Well, I got news for you, Lindsey. The trial will be in the Senate. And the Senate is controlled by the grand old perverts. It's in Republican hands. So what excuse will you use during the trial? This will not be Democratic witnesses only. This will not be. Everything that they are throwing at this has to do with procedure. It has to do with the way that depositions were done. But it's all going to fall apart. What then? What will they do and say then? RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.